What's going on, guys? This is Joe Young coming at you in the video for the week. So this week we got some good news. The rack outside finally cycled. It took probably a good solid almost month and a half to 2 months. There was a lot of ammonia in the tank. I did a bunch of water changes and finally the ammonia level came down. The tank was actually fully cycled for maybe 2 days or so. So what I did was I actually hooked up the Hypothemus lutenis Pleco tank, so they only had the two big Plecos, so into the actual full system, because that was actually its own dedicated quarantine tank. They've gone through quarantine. I've had them for almost like 2 months. They've been eating really well. They've been going through all the quarantine, so they look really healthy. So what I did was I went through and plumbed that tank into the full tank, just because they're either going to be in that system or the other system. So either way, I was going to introduce those Plecos into one of those rack systems anyways. I actually waited a couple of days so that I can make sure that the beneficial bacteria are actually building up correctly and to the amount to actually house the actual fishes. So this week, I'm going to go ahead and start moving some of the Plecos that I had in the 30-gallon tank inside here. What I'm going to do is I'm probably going to move the L397 Plecos first. I'm going to go ahead and move those guys into that new rack system. I'm going to move them down into the bare bottom, just because these guys are wood eaters and they don't really do that well with just algae, but they can eat algae. So I need to have a tank with wood. So I'm going to keep all the bare bottom tanks with wood, and I'll probably have a couple wood pieces in the actual planted areas, but that will actually mainly house Plecos that actually eat algae, just because there'll be some algae on the actual glass. So I want to kind of do them in steps or phases. So this week I'm going to go ahead and add in the 397 Plecos. Next week I'll probably add in the leopard Plecos and probably some of the other Plecos that are in the quarantine tanks outside, just so that I can kind of start to shut down some of the quarantine tanks, start to move some of the tanks that are inside as well, that been housing some of the quarantine fish. I need to just kind of move stuff around. So right now I have 3 adults that are in the 30-gallon tank. I'm gonna go ahead and grab these guys. They're actually really ginormous. I believe they're all males. Maybe one of them might be a female, but they definitely look like males to me. Action going on right now. I have a bunch of juveniles outside in the other rack. But as you can see, these guys are really plump, big. They've been fighting for caves. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that I have at least 2 caves in here for at least 2 of the males. The other one kind of fight for the cave or kind of run around. It's a pretty big tank, so I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, finally adding actually livestock into this rack. It's actually been a very long time, and I'm just happy that they're going into the rack system. And sadly, in a couple months, I'm going to be moving, and again, I'm going to have to do a similar, tear down and recycle. But for now, these guys are going to go in here for the next couple months. They're going to, pretty much grow in this tank. It's a lot of room, so hopefully these guys can kind of grow fast and get up in stock, so that we can get some breeding action going. Moving on to the other rack, the bare bottom tank at the bottom actually has a mix of Starlight Plecos and then the Red Tiger Plecos kind of in the same tank. I believe I have 10 or so of these juvenile 397 Plecos in here. They've actually grown a lot since I've actually had them. When I bought them, they were about 1.5 inches, no more than actually 2 inches for a few of them. But for the most part, they're fairly tiny. For the past year or so, year and a half, I've had these guys. They've actually gone up to almost 2.5 inches to almost like slightly under 3 inches for some of the slightly bigger ones. So they're growing actually very nice, very big. These guys still have quite some time to actually grow to a full adult. So I'll probably say another year or so, we'll probably get some of these guys to the 3.5 inch range to maybe 4 inch, and then we can possibly see some breeding action if we get some females in this batch. If I'm super unlucky where all these are males, man, that would be horrible. But I think that we definitely have a chance of getting at least 1 or 2 females in here. Obviously, having more males will probably be better in terms of breeding. That way the females can just continue to lay eggs, and the different males will kind of just house or kind of nurture the little fries and whatnot. But we'll see what happens once these guys kind of grow into their tank. As you can see here, I caught all of them. There's a crap ton of them in here. I forgot, I forgot how many I actually had in here, just because the tank's so big. I just normally see a few of them in and out, and pulling them all out like this and just kind of putting them into like a little container, and man, that's a lot of them. And actually a lot of these guys actually have some really cool patterns from above, and maybe they're even like slightly different variation or different species of the 397, and maybe they're just a morph that species. But if that's, in any case, these guys are absolutely beautiful. If you guys get a chance to get these guys, they have some of the most beautiful colors that you'll get in Plecos. After I got all the Plecos into the tank, I actually ended up adding in another Pleco cave, and then also a little condo cave for the little smaller Plecos to kind of just interact with each other and kind of just hang around in that little area. There's plenty of driftwood in here for them to munch on, so I'm not too worried about them starving in terms of driftwood. These guys definitely need their driftwood in their diet, and they do crap a ton of it. I'm looking forward to seeing a bunch of wood crap all over this tank. Alright guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's update. If you guys aren't subscribed yet, make sure you guys are subscribed. And like always, until next time guys, peace.